Hello, everyone.
Hey everyone, hope you all are doing fine. Today on our podcast, we are joined by Phyllis D Light, fourth generation herbalist and healer with deep roots in Southern folk medicine through her Creek and Cherokee heritage. With over 3 decades of experience, she has worked in both clinical and teaching roles, sharing her knowledge of herbalism, nutrition, and holistic health. Phyllis is the director of Appalachian Center for Natural Health, a faculty member at the Matthew Wood Institute of Herbalism, and the author of Southern Folk Medicine Healing Traditions from Appalachian Fields and Forests. She is apprenticed with the late Tommy Bass, one of the respected folk herbalists of the South, and continues to pass down the wisdom of Appalachian traditions. Her work beautifully bridges the past and present, bringing timeless healing practices into modern life.
Welcome, Phyllis. Thank you so much for being on the show with us.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me. That was a very lovely introduction. Thank
It's an
you.
honor.
So,
Thank you.
Phyllis, we're actually starting off with our raft of questions. We just wanted to ask you, how did you get into herbalism? What was your journey like and everything?
Oh, well, my dad was an herbalist,
Okay.
and my grandmother was a midwife and herbalist. My great grandmother was a midwife and herbalist, and her mother, so that'd be my
Yeah.
great grandmother,
Yeah.
were midwives and herbalists. I'm not a midwife, but I carry on the herbal tradition. Yeah, and something really cool, because I've been, for my own personal journey, trying to track a paper trail of the healing people in my family. And so I found the last person that my great grandmother delivered and took care of, and signed her birth certificate, and she's 93 now. But I know, but she sent me a copy of where my great grandmother Ava signed her birth certificate and took care of her mother and told me the whole story that got passed on in her family. And it was like, oh, it was just like one of those heart things that, oh, I've got it on paper, not just family stories.
Yeah.
So, but
That's beautiful.
family stories are good too.
Yeah. Definitely.
I just like one question before we tap into the topic. Uh, Based on what your great 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 grandmother, how she used to practice herbalism,
Mm.
and today how herbalism is practiced, do you see
Yeah.
a big difference, or what
Yeah.
would love to
Yeah.
have you?
So with my great or just my grandmother even, because my grandmother was born in 1900, the year 1900. So that, was over 100 years ago, obviously, 125 years ago, but it was like a different culture and a different medical approach in that time period, because then nobody had access to doctors. There just, number one, weren't a lot in the area because it was a very poor region. There was a lot of poverty in the area. So people totally depended on herbalism and home remedies. Almost everybody knew some home remedies. And my grandmother basically never saw anyone on medications. And also at that time period, no one was on medications. So she was very active in her practice in the 20s to the 1960s. That was a time period. No one was on medication. It was kind of pre-pharmaceutical era. So even if you went in 1945 to the doctor, there's a good chance that you were just going to be told, go home, rest. Here's your a dietary approach. Here's some medicine for a week. You know, but that was just the whole country, and that was a great part of the world during that time period, right? So now we've moved into the pharmaceutical era, where it is a situation of, like, I might see a client on 5 or 6 medications. My grandmother would have that's totally a game changer, you know, and they might have 4 or 5 different diagnoses,
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
example. They might be diabetic, have high blood pressure, high cholesterol, there's a whole list of things now they're diagnosed with. My grandmother never saw that. She never saw anyone overweight, for example.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
no,
Yeah.
people weren't overweight because you had a limited food supply and you had to work with your body on the land
Yes.
in, farming or construction or forestry, so there was no computer jobs way before the computer era. So people weren't sitting around. So just to see someone with diabetes was an unusual event. Like, whoa, okay, what's going on? So she would be totally lost to a
Yeah.
great extent,
Yeah.
just from kind of like our dependence on pharmaceuticals and, um, how people are less depending on taking care of yourself and want somebody else to take care of them instead. I wanna go to the doctor so the doctor can take care of me. Even though I've just got this little thing going on, I wanna go to get it checked out, where in her time period, she would have went, "Let me bandage that up for you, put some herbs on it, let me bandage it up, suck it up, go back to work." It was just kind of like more self-reliance also, I think, in that time period, so she would be lost, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it is the world today, you know, and even in my practice, because I started practicing when I was like 19, right? Because I started when I was 10, learning from my grandparents and my father. So I got started at 10, learning the plants in the woods and learning, following them around, learning how to take care of people. So I was seeing people on my own by 19.
Wow.
So
That's
yeah. So even from then to I've seen just like this change from my early days in herbalism to, what's going on now. Also, we only use native plants. That was all that was available. What was in the woods, what was in the yard, what could we harvest, what could we dry or process ourselves. And now with kind of global trade, I can get herbs from any country, from
Yeah.
any tradition, right?
Yeah.
And there's some wonderful herbs out there in other countries. And I'm glad to be able to kind of exchange that herbal information with, like our people from Ayurvedic traditions or TCM, some of the Asian traditions, Tibetan medicine. I'm very happy to be able to go, oh, I want to check this out. I want to try this. But, my love is the native plants
Native.
where I live.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Totally. Wow, that was an amazing introduction, and your viewpoint on what was back then and what's now, because it was simpler times, simple people. Now it's become more complicated with
Yeah.
a lot of, I think, complexity in our life with
Yes.
modernity.
yeah.
So yeah,
Pollution, toxins,
yeah, a whole
lifestyle.
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah. I can, in my early days with my parents and my dad and my grandparents gathering herbs in the woods, we didn't take water with us because we would just drink out of the creek. We get thirsty. Oh, there's water. Just drink out of the creek. I would not dare do that these days. I would be so afraid to just drink water in the wild without filtering it somehow. Ah, but we just did with no harm. It was like, oh, that's cool. There's water. You're thirsty, you know? Yeah. No, now I've got my little jar of water going with me.
I think we all need that now. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, today we are talking about menopause and perimenopause. And I want you to touch upon this because I think women misunderstand about what's really menopause, and in fact they feel like they've lost that essence or that beauty of being fertile. So, could you just shed some light on that?
Yeah, and some of my experience, because I way past that, because I'm a grandmother, right? Um, uh, I do think you're correct that in the modern society, in the world of, internet and industrial progress, that, women are there's been a generational lack of information. So it's like what your grandmother might have experienced or thought about this change of life didn't get passed on because your mom might be had to work and had to be out in the world or had to do this or do that and didn't get that information because she was so busy and she had family to take care of. Plus she's working and she's doing this and that. And so it doesn't get passed on. So I think there's a generational skip and a lot of information related to reproduction in many different ways. So, for example, I did a class for young women. And is it okay if I be a little explicit here on? Yeah. Okay. So I did a class for young women who were wanting to have healthy pregnancies. So I did a fertility class. Let's have a healthy pregnancy. How does that translate? And then I took it to this is what happens after you have the baby and you're back home. Now you really have to take care of yourself. And it was shocking how many young women in the class didn't know that once you have the baby, you will continue to bleed for 6 weeks when you get home. 6 weeks on average. You are still bleeding because the uterus has to shrink and it has to shed what was in there. I mean, and in my grandmother's day, that was just common knowledge. Every woman knew that because it got passed on by the women in the family. It's like, "Okay, when you get home, you have to take care of yourself because 'cause you're gonna be bleeding for 6 weeks." And in my grandmother's day, women took care of themselves, and it was called confinement not because you're trying to keep women away from the world, but it was considered that 6 weeks after giving childbirth was really important to regain the blood you lost during childbirth and to regain the blood you lost in the 6 weeks following, and to make sure that your baby wasn't out in the world being exposed to every kind of virus and bacteria in the world. So mom and baby stayed home for 6 weeks in confinement as recovery, not prison. Makes it sound like prison or jail or something, but no, just to recover. And it was a very bonding time also between mom and baby, baby and family, dad and baby and mom, so it was a very lovely time. But the women in the class had never heard of that. And it was
Yeah.
shocking to them that they were gonna continue bleeding for that long of a time after having the baby. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have
So
a
yeah,
question. Sorry to barge in. It's just a quick question
yeah,
because I came across this post on Facebook where they said you don't cut the umbilical cord immediately after delivery. So is that true?
that would be the best. In a conventional medicine, they cut the cord within a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A minute. But that cord is filled with stem cells for the baby. It's filled with blood for
Yeah.
the baby. And it
Yeah.
gives the baby this immune boost to meet the world because it has no immune system, right? So traditionally, like in my grandmother's day, they would let the cord stop pulsing
Yes.
before cutting it so the baby got all the stem cells and
So
all the blood and all the iron. Yeah.
how do they know? Is it like does it turn a little whitish or something?
It
That's when they know that.
pulses. It
Yeah.
actually beats.
Yeah.
Okay,
The cord beats
Yeah.
like a pulse
Okay.
because it's still attached to mom,
Yeah.
right.
right?
Yeah.
And so it has a beat, and it starts slowing down and slowing down and slowing down, and then it's like, "Okay, now you can cut it."
Right.
Okay. So that
But
happens
now
in
they sell that. Now they're like, "Oh, let's cut
yeah,
this. Let's sell this to some
yeah,
company working with stem cells," instead of your baby getting it and getting this boost in the
yes,
world.
yeah,
Yeah, they're gonna get
That
rid
also
of.
prioritizes like home births, right? Home births are even more required because you are more in control, and especially
mm,
the bacteria, the environment, like the hospital environment might not be the best because it's too clean, maybe.
Yeah, well,
uh,
it's and one way it's too clean, and in the other way, hospital-acquired infections is like a top cause of death.
yeah,
Oh,
So you have to look at that too. Birthing centers, I think, are good. Home births, if you have a qualified person, that is really aware of every single thing that could go wrong because things can go wrong. 99% of the time, it's easy. I popped
yeah,
out 5 babies, no problem,
yeah.
right? Um, you know, but not everybody can do that. The cord might be wrapped around the baby's neck, or there might be fetal distress, or the baby might be turned wrong. Now, these are unusual situations, but they're possibilities. And so you need a qualified, experienced person who recognizes and plans for these possibilities that may never happen, right? And it's also good to be close to a hospital.
Right.
So, um, during the fertile years of a woman, there are changes, and there are changes every decade. So, women in their 20s, they're um, at the highest let me see how to say that. Nutritionally, hormonally, it's really kind of historically the best time to have a baby. So baby's gonna get all your good stuff. So women are born with all the eggs they ever have. You don't get new eggs, they're in there. And then they mature as time goes on. So the earlier in the fertility cycle, the healthier the egg,
Yeah,
right?
yes,
Right? So that's the 20s. And then the 30s, hormonal levels are shifting a bit. Those 1,000 eggs you have born with are down to maybe 400, right? Because it's going to change over time, which is why it's harder for older women to get pregnant. Hormones are dropping, you know, and there are fewer eggs. There's not as many eggs in reserve. So it's called the egg reserve. And they don't mature as well. And they've also been exposed to toxins in the environment, radiation here and there. You're right. Right. So, um, which doesn't mean you can't have a healthy, happy baby. Older, I did. I was 43 when I had my last baby, which the doctors treated me like I was a geriatric patient. I'm only 43, but anything past 36 is considered high risk pregnancy by conventional medicine. So,
but is that
uh,
true?
pardon?
that is so
But that's not true, right?
I on a practical level, it's not, but they're looking at it from a hormonal, nutritional, well, just hormonal point of view. It's harder to hold on to a pregnancy the older you get because of shifting progesterone levels. And progesterone is the hormone that keeps the pregnancy in place, right? And that tends to drop as women get older. So the 30s is after 35 it is varies with the individual woman. It's like perimenopause because there's that big of a shift between the hormones of the 20s and the hormones of the mid 30s. Right? And this is not true of everyone. Again, it's individual. Some women do just fine. Some women are already going into menopause at 36. So menopause itself can be from 36 to like 55. a big time period.
Yeah.
So the factors that might influence all these things, including how if they decide to get pregnant later on in life, like post 36, as you said, and also the whole period of how much time they remain fertile, depends on the
The
things like
lifestyle.
lifestyle or viral activations or heavy metal toxicity.
All that can play in there. Endocrine disruptors, estrogen mimics in the environment, things that act like that estrogen. Um, yes, all that is going to play a role in there. But, stress is the big one. Elevated cortisol is absolutely the big one. And oftentimes, when women come to me and we've tried several different things, I'm like, we're down to stress, you know? And I have actually occasionally told women, find a new job or quit your job. As long as your cortisol is up here, it's affecting your estrogen level,
Yeah.
right? Right?
Yeah.
It's affecting your thyroid. It's
Yeah.
affecting the whole endocrine system. But before that, we're gonna try nervines and we're gonna try valerian, we're gonna try ashwagandha, we're gonna try a lot of stuff to help lower that stress level. And this is women of any age. I've seen 20 something women, the stress level is so high they couldn't get pregnant. And I have seen women go through like 3 rounds of IVF. I mean, if it was IVF is most commonly aimed at women in their late 30s and early 40s.
Yeah.
This is just very telling about how that industry has just blossomed. And by women, being in this situation where their lifestyle or things in the environment or their stress level is impeding their ability to get pregnant.
Yeah.
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 So if that wasn't the case, IVF wouldn't be a big industry, but it's a huge industry.
Yeah.
And what you said totally makes sense. And that's also the reason why I started with functional medicine. And then very soon, as we were working with our clients and even in our own families, we saw that stress was a major factor,
Yeah.
anxiety and all. And so
Yes.
that's why I kind of shifted entirely. And now I only work with the mind and the multidimensional mind. And I'm
Wow.
managing stress and anxiety
Yeah.
and dealing with those things where people maybe they are not aligned with their purpose or they're not aligned with their essence or the inner self, their
That's right.
conscious. So all sorts of things can really occur, but yeah, that's I think a topic for another day. I
Yeah, but it's a big one. It is a huge one. Yeah.
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. So in perimenopause, hormones are dropping. Often the cycle lengthens or shortens. It depends on the person. So instead of 28-day cycle, somebody might have a 32-day cycle, right? Initially. Estradiol tends to rise. Luteinizing hormone tends to rise, but follicle stimulating hormone tends to drop. So the egg isn't maturing in the follicle as well.
There are less oocytes in the ovary.
Yes,
Wow.
yes. So that's happening. Um, and some women, um, PCOS,
Hmm.
this is when for some women PCOS shows up. Now I've seen 20 somethings with PCOS, but kind of from a historical, looking at the literature point of view and my experience, it tends to be like mid 30s when PCOS or somewhere in the 30s when it shows up. When they actually look at the blood work and go, "Oh, testosterone is estrogen progesterone down." You know, this is that time period when it comes in. And again, I'm gonna go back to stress and lifestyle and everything we just mentioned on PCOS because it's become an epidemic.
Yeah.
It is
That
becoming an epidemic.
So
that's
PCOS in general, we could say a root cause of PCOS is basically blood sugar dysregulation, which has other root causes.
Yeah, but is that a symptom or is that the cause?
Yeah.
yeah. That's
You
okay.
know, it is definitely, as I look at it and as I teach, it is a problem in endocrine disruption and it's affecting every single endocrine gland. So almost every woman with PCS, not all, but as they get into PCS, you're going to end up on thyroid hormone or having to work on their thyroid. They've got blood sugar dysregulations. They've got hormonal dysregulations. They have sleep disorder, pineal. I mean, it's the whole endocrine system that ends up dysregulated.
Actually, so when I was studying functional medicine, the one thing that I learned was insulin is the insulin which is never tested when they go for lab tests is generally high. So the blood sugar is seemingly um in range, and that's why it's never detected as that problem. And of course, like I think testosterone rising is also another effect of
Yes,
that.
You need to check your HbA1c levels for that.
you do. You need to
Yeah.
check your, yes.
And
Mhm.
fasting
Yeah.
insulin as well.
Yes, you do. So generally during perimenopause, if it's just kind of a more natural, healthy perimenopause, women are still going to experience some shifts in how their period feels to them, or maybe the length of the period. In perimenopause, for the first time, some women might experience a fibroid. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
that's when they tend to show up, is in late perimenopause. So you've got, for some women, excess bleeding on their period, or 2-week periods, or it's you know anemia, um where women are just susceptible to anemia because, hey, bleed every month. But then it can become a serious issue, anemia, for someone with uterine fibroids. But this is the first time they show up, in general.
Actually, with one of my clients, we were working on her PCOS, but also at the same time, she had just after working for some time, after a few months, she also developed fibrocystic breasts.
Yeah, that
And
tends to
yes,
show up. Now, these things could have been there,
yes,
a long time, but as
yeah,
hormones shift, then they come to light, and then they become problematic. And, going to the conventional physicians in my area, generally they say, "Oh, let's do a hysterectomy,"
yes,
right? And so I encourage women to, like, let's see if we can manage this herbally and nutritionally, because in 2 years you're going to be in menopause and it's all going to stop, right? And you just have to, like, manage it until the moment of menopause. And then it's just like somebody turned the faucet off and everything shrinks. The fibrocystic breasts are gone, which can be low iodine, by the way, for fibrocystic breasts. Also, fibroids can be low iodine, can affect that. Not because necessarily because of its effect on the thyroid, but just what the body uses iodine for at the cellular level. So that can make a difference.
Just wanted to add like few things. Like, of course, because in between we were specializing only for thyroid
yeah,
until, of course, I decided to change my path. So in thyroid, we what we were actually discussing and telling people, and why we also chose thyroid was because any problem in the body affects the thyroid function, because the thyroid is like a thermostat. So
thermostat. Yeah,
anything happening and the person feeling fatigued, or even like they have anemia, if there's a viral active, then feed on iron. And if
Right.
infections, or even bacterial infections, I suppose.
Right. Like E. coli loves iron.
Exactly.
yeah,
So that's the reason why the body's not allowing, it's locked away the
yeah,
iron, and it's not allowing it. And people just keep taking more and more iron.
Right. No, I agree with you. I
Yeah.
really try to kind of manage anemia, in kind of different ways, because if iron gets too high, you're right. It's feeding, um, it's feeding a ton. It's feeding tuberculosis bacteria. It's feeding, there's a whole list of bacteria that is iron dependent. Lyme's is not.
Mhm.
okay.
Lyme's is not iron dependent. So, you know, there are, nutrients in, like, milk, that in dairy, that block iron uptake. by bacteria. So if people can either get that nutrient in a capsule, if they're not lactose intolerant, because there's still a little milk in that. But there are things that are available to kind of help reduce. It doesn't totally 100% block iron uptake, but it keeps it in the body rather than allowing the bacteria to pick it up and utilize it.
Right. And iron in
Yeah.
general also, if I'm not mistaken, it does contribute to inflammation, right? If it's already
Yeah.
elevated.
And if it's elevated, then you've got the potential for hemochromatosis. And that's a whole different kettle of fish because now it's affecting the heart, it's affecting the pancreas, it's affecting the liver, it's affecting the internal organs if you have too much iron,
Right.
Yeah.
right? So, so this can happen to menopausal women, and I do keep my eye on that. Especially women who were going through perimenopause and they had slowly kind of everything is winding down and they can feel their hormones winding down and their skin's getting a little drier. There's a little more vaginal dryness. They can feel their sex drive isn't what it used to be in their 20s. Their hair is getting a little drier. And so they can feel they're kind of winding down a little bit. Um, and then they hit menopause, and these are the women I really wanna watch the iron levels on because they were never big bleeders to start with,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so then they hit menopause, and they're not very active because if we're super physically active, we use up iron. Every time we exercise, we're using iron to carry every hemoglobin, oxygen around the body. So exercise is one way to use up iron. But I watch them because I see a number of women move into hemochromatosis after menopause, just because they're eating an iron heavy diet like they needed to when they were younger, but they were never big bleeders. And so now they're not very active. So now there's iron accumulation. And so I do keep my eye on that. I've had several clients after menopause who got hemochromatosis. One client got kind of permanent liver damage from the hemochromatosis because the doctor never, it
Yeah.
was obvious on her blood work. I'm looking at her blood work going, I bet you have hemochromatosis. It's just the markers on the blood were elevated, but the doctor never said anything to her about it. Um, Oddly.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I'm not
They
sure they noticed that here.
Yeah. And also the only like sort of one or two things that you can do is like blood donation in
Yes.
that case. Yeah.
Just going vegetarian usually does it. I say to my clients, you need to be vegetarian for 6 weeks and then get it retested. That's never failed with meat eaters. I mean, because I'm in an area where people are like red meat every single day, right?
Yeah.
Everybody loves their meat. I love my meat, but I don't have the iron problem. I mean, right? I love my steak. I could eat that. So there are a lot of heavy meat eaters here, and I just say, I mean, like twice a day you have meat. This is kind of like the cultural norm, and so I just go, please just don't eat any meat for 6 weeks, and let's work you out a vegetarian diet. You can have dairy if dairy is okay. You can have eggs. We're vegetarian, not vegan, but beans and kind of like the traditional foods in the area, like beans, potatoes, lots of cruciferous vegetables. So we do have kind of like this southern culture of fresh vegetables that I just kind of go, eat like this. And every single time in 6 weeks, they've used up their stores, and I go, you have to walk, you have to move, be vegetarian. And then after that, when their iron comes back down to normal, then when I'm like, only twice a week. This is your new diet because you're the person, possibly genetically, that is going to accumulate iron. So twice a week, you can have meat, but you still mostly be vegetarian. And that works almost every time. Seriously. Truly, I've never seen it fail.
That's
And
a
then they
nice.
don't have to go get blood drawn out,
Yeah, that's true.
you know? Right? And then there yeah, so women can have hemochromatosis, men can too, but it's postmenopausal women that I see. But I am in an area where Northern Europeans settled, and so it's a genetic issue with Northern Europeans.
Yeah. It only happens when your hormones are fluctuating and when actually they're going down, right? With estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone.
Right.
Yeah.
Usually I don't see the hemochromatosis until the woman stops bleeding and hasn't bled for about 6 months. Like, definitely menopause is here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
So, perimenopause, women also tend to be a little more, uh, because the hormones are shifting, stress becomes more of a factor because it's easier to get stressed. Estrogen is very protective against adrenaline issues, against cortisol. Estrogen is very protective. So as estrogen is falling and shifting, women feel more stressed. So they don't have that protection. And so now, testosterone levels have always been there, but now there are more, the body uses, I think, testosterone during stress a little bit more where when they're younger, it has the protection of the estrogen and it uses that, and so that is the mediator. And so if we think of fight or flight and we think about, and this is a generalization and y'all don't get upset with me for saying this, but
No, no, no.
if we think of fight or flight, we think of estrogen as flight. It's like,
Yeah.
I'm going to get out of here.
Yeah.
And testosterone is like, I'm going to beat you up.
Yeah.
That's the fight.
Yeah.
That's the fight or flight. The closer into further into perimenopause, because estrogen, testosterone is shifting, women are like, I'm just going to beat you up.
Yeah.
Because now the testosterone is what is making an appearance to help them deal with the stress. It's like, now I'm going to like say something about this. I'm not
Yeah.
going to let this pass.
Yeah.
So the older a woman gets in general, the more willing they are to speak up.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. Does that make sense? If you
Yes.
think about your mothers and grandmothers.
Yeah. Yes, that's true. That's true, actually. And I've always heard women saying, if like example, actresses like, now I don't care, now in my 40s, I just don't care about
That's
anyone or
right.
anything. I'm unapologetic about everything. So I can,
Exactly. And it's not that testosterone is rising. It's
yeah.
just that now it's uncovered
Yes,
a
that's
little
true.
and just a little bit. But men
Yeah.
do the opposite. Men do the opposite. I'm going to throw this in here as they age and they're hitting what are andropause.
Yeah.
And there is a shift in testosterone, and they put on a little weight, muscles going to fat. Fat
Yeah.
makes estrogen. Men
Yes.
get a little softer. They start
Mm.
crying on the TV shows. Oh, I'm crying. This is like a sweet TV show. I'm crying, right?
Yeah.
They're more likely to flee, less
Yeah.
likely to fight. And
Yeah.
so it becomes like a balance.
Mm.
Right? It becomes like a balance. So I see it in the grocery stores. Partners in the grocery stores when they're young, the wife is pushing the grocery cart and the husband is just, walking a little bit, putting things into the cart, right? Older couples, the husband or the male partner is pushing the grocery cart and the wife is putting all the things in the cart. So there's this like shift as people age and hormones, which shifts their relationship.
Yeah.
Wow. But is it also possible that as after andropause, actually that's something that I'm very new to. I never read on that. That if let's say a male is weightlifting and and with herbs probably that can help boost testosterone, that can be in a way like avoided. Or...
Well,
What
Right?
is it?
you know, testosterone supplementation is a big field right now
Yeah.
Yeah.
for
Not
men.
with herbs, specifically with herbs,
But
because
we wanna deal with herbs, right? We wanna
Yeah.
deal with herbs, but it still comes down to stress and
Mm.
cortisol. Even for men, as they age, it's still gonna because cortisol is going to make elevated cortisol in men is still gonna make more is gonna make more estrogen.
yeah,
Yeah.
Like,
It's true.
so it's still that kind of aging shift. But when the men are younger, it's like they're fighting or fleeing or whatever, and they're dispensing the stress. It's not accumulating.
yeah,
Mm.
makes sense.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's
technically, if the stress is low and there are herbs to support testosterone, and there's a lot of heavy activity, like weightlifting and whatnot, then it can be delayed or avoided. One can say,
oh gosh, I look at Asian cultures,
yeah,
Yeah.
right? So like Chinese or maybe South Korean, but maybe Japanese, but particularly Chinese. Look at Jackie Chan. I love Jackie Chan.
yeah,
I
Yeah.
don't I mean, he's like 70 what?
Yeah.
Um, and he's fit, he's
Yeah.
active. I can look at him and I can think he's not taking testosterone supplementation. You can tell that this is just him,
yeah,
Yeah.
and that's a great model to
Yeah.
think about. You eat healthy, you exercise. I don't know if he takes any herbs. I don't know if he takes any supplements, but I look at him and he looks healthy, right?
Yes.
I look at kind of like if I look at an American counterpart, and I'm gonna go Chuck Norris, and also love Chuck
yeah,
Norris because I like martial arts, right?
Yeah.
Big martial arts fan. Chuck Norris also is very healthy. He takes a lot of herbs. He
Mm.
is big into nutrition, and he talks about the herbs he takes. He talks about, his diet. He's about the same age, close to the same age as Jackie Chan. But I look at him and he looks like he's got maybe 20 pounds extra that he's carrying around,
Yeah.
right? And he's strong. He's lifting weights. I mean, he's awesome. But I can tell that with that extra weight, not not quite as,
It. Yeah.
that leanness says something,
Mm.
right,
right?
Yeah.
makes
That leanness says something.
Yeah. Totally.
So I look to kind of look into the world to see how. And Asian women is one of the longest to live subgroups in the world,
Mm. Yeah.
and look at that diet. So I like to look at things like that, especially the blue zones and postmenopause, how people age. And it comes down to diet, some herbs, and not having stress in your life or having much less stress in your life and
Yeah.
being physically active. You have to keep moving.
Yeah.
So, this is something I encourage menopausal women to do, perimenopausal women into menopause. You have to move. You have to stretch. You have to walk. If you don't build muscle, then you could potentially increase your risk of diabetes, type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol. You have to move. You have to work hard, which is what my grandmother did, my mother did, my great grandmother did. They had to keep moving and working just for survival. And with a very kind of affluent economics in the world today, don't have to do that anymore. But we're losing so much by not continuing to move. The more muscle you have going into menopause, the less symptoms you have.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah.
okay, yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
that making sense?
yes,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
More muscle you have going into old age because menopause is that shift
Yeah.
where you have fewer days ahead than you do in the past, right? The more muscle you have going into old age, the less elderly diseases you have, if we want to put it that way, and the
Mm.
longer you live.
Yeah.
yeah,
It's all dependent on muscle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
right? And the more muscle you have, the stronger your bones are,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
right?
Totally.
So then you have less osteoporosis. So postmenopausal, now we have to think about osteoporosis because women fall and break a hip. The average lifespan after a broken hip, 2 years, even if they repair the hip.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of muscle
Yeah.
and speaking of bone recovery, of course, I mean, there's a lot of confusion over milk. Some people say, oh, dairy actually does not really add calcium in the bones. And and now there are people coming out and speaking that you don't need so much protein in order to build muscle. You actually need more carbohydrates, which actually makes sense. And what I see it as, yeah, protein is necessary. And tell me if I'm wrong here, to perhaps help the muscle repair after it's been broken down. And but if you want to actually build muscle and retain muscle, you need carbohydrates. Because in my own experience, when I followed the keto diet, big mistake, at least for me, I lost a lot of muscle. Although I was having a lot of protein.
Yeah. Some people do that. But were you working out with the keto diet?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So I don't do good with keto diet. I gained weight. I'm like,
Yeah. That's
I put on weight with the keto diet. Everybody else is losing weight. And I'm like, "Huh."
yeah.
So some of it comes down to genetics. We have to look at genetics. Some of it comes down to blood type, Also, are you a blood type A or O or
B.
B?
B.
B, right?
Yeah.
So like O's do better with it.
I
S- And B's, ABs do less well with it. One of the things I don't like about some of the diets is they act like or they promote themselves as being the same for everyone, regardless of where you're living. That's not going to be true. Most of the diets like that are designed for Central and Northern European ancestry. So you have to keep that in mind. Right?
Okay.
You have
Yeah.
to keep that in mind.
Yeah.
The blood type book, Eat for Your Blood Type, very Northern European eccentric. This is the research. That's who they researched on. It's not going to be true for everyone. Yeah, across every culture, across every genetic. So it wasn't true for me, even though I kind of look more Northern European. My more immediate ancestry is Native American. And when I had my genetics, when I did my genetics, I was Scandinavian and Asian.
oh
Okay. Yeah.
Right. But
Yeah.
Native Americans are Asian. That's their ancestry. So a lot of times on those genetic tests, people with Native American background show up as Asians.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
you know, Mongolia. So you have to look at that. I think we have to look at the land our people came from, our
Yeah.
ancestry, right?
Yeah.
yeah.
And what did they eat? So the country in the world with the highest rate of diabetes is anybody? Anybody want to guess?
US, India.
China.
No.
Okay.
Wow.
Wow.
Okay.
China. Yeah. And it's also a group of people who live longer, but not as long as Singapore or as long as Japan, the Japanese, but are the South Koreans are kind of right behind. Thai, not as long. The diet is just too rice heavy, simple carb. Let's say simple carb heavy, not enough protein on a regular basis. So there's got to be that balance. And I hear what you're saying about we do need carbs. Carbs will protect our muscles, provide immediate energy, particularly as hormones are shifting, but without adequate protein for repair of the muscle, um, and for storage, we store our protein needs in our muscles, then we're going to be also going to be in trouble. So it's finding the balance. If you don't know your balance, I generally recommend 30, 30, 30. in your diet. 30% protein, kind of 30% of fat. I'm sorry, 30, 30, 40, and 40% carbs.
Mm.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
So,
even yeah,
okay.
since our ancestry is Indian, obviously. So, in India, we have like tortillas, like
Wheat
the
tortillas.
wheat tortillas. It's
Tortitas.
called rotis, and we have like our vegetable, a curry. We have our pulses, and we have some salad and pickles to as a condiment. So it's like 50% is carbohydrates, 35% to 40% is pulses or some vegetable, and the rest 15-20% is your the condiments of the assortments.
All right. So I look at, there's a huge Indian population in my area, you know, and I've worked in that population, for about 25 years. And within that population, I was a herbalist for a lot of years before they built their temple and they got someone came over from India and that person started doing, but I still have Indian clients and I still go and do kind of like talks in the community. And one of the things I have always loved is usually it's into one's home. They invite me into the home. I do a little talk. I see clients in the home and they're cooking.
Yeah,
I
that's
love
true.
it, they're cooking. And then
Yeah.
I and then and when they get through cooking, I'm like, "Oh my god, I get to eat."
Yes.
You know, it's like this one of samosas.
Yeah.
I love them.
Yes. So,
So it's right. But one of the things I have noticed is, you know, if the it's chicken or it's fish, not it's never gonna be pork,
yeah.
Yeah.
right? Never gonna
Yeah.
be pork, occasionally beef, but mostly chicken, mostly or and fish. And this is what I see in the community here. And I look at how much chicken is in the dishes because like I I love Korean fried chicken. Oh my god, that is so good, but I like spicy food. So I go to the Korean restaurant, I'm like, "Give me fried chicken and maybe a little alcohol sake." But no, mostly fried chicken, and it's, like, super spicy, and it's a big piece of chicken leg, right? But typically, what I saw with the cooking is that it's, like, more like the animal meat, like the chicken was pulled apart, and it's in bits in pieces, not big hunks, right? Right? So it was hard for me to gauge how much protein is actually in there
Hmm.
because I'm used to seeing a hunk of meat like a chicken breast, like, oh,
Yes.
that's like 40 grams of protein,
Yeah.
right? So when
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
shredded, is that 20 grams of protein or 15 grams of protein? But I really felt like in the community I was involved with, they were not getting enough protein. Right? And when I and one way I kind of made in my assessment is I looked at how soft or watery their arms were.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. Right.
That's true.
And I was like, not enough protein.
Yeah.
Mm. Okay.
Yeah. The legs are not a good indicator because we use our legs all the time.
Yeah.
And so we're always going to have some muscle in our legs. They might get a little limpy or watery due to other conditions, but not our arms. So I look at arms for that, for protein.
Yeah. That's
Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
yes. Totally.
Yeah,
Totally. I get actually.
yeah,
Because a lot of women in India are overweight, being vegetarians most of the
yeah,
time, and nowadays with veganism that's come into light, so people are also going in that direction.
yeah.
And but I have also noticed this one thing, like hot flashes. So
Yes,
they do not have a lot of hot flashes, which is a phenomena of the Europeans or Americans, I guess.
yeah. And I do have a theory about that. And I think it's because of all the beans and peas, all the phytoestrogens that are in the diet of like in India and Asia. And Asia is most more tofu. Asian women don't tend to have hot flashes either. But if you're having a phytoestrogen every day, which acts like, let me see, attaches at estriol receptor sites. It can reduce that. Now, in my traditional culture where I live, we had beans or peas every day because we didn't always have meat, right? So I still continue that. I love beans, I love peas, I love kidney beans, I love lima bean, but I never had a hot flash when I went through menopause. 0.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah. It's
And
actually
I
going.
ate meat, but I still ate beans and peas. So I think when we look at areas of the world where people live the longest, the blue zone areas,
Yeah.
beans was the common food with everyone.
Yeah.
Beans,
Yeah.
some kind of legume.
Yeah. Totally.
Was yeah. And so it to me, it seems like if we think about human evolution over a time period of hundreds or thousands of years and what we ate and what benefited our body, well, beans had to been there at the beginning because they are attaching the phytochemicals are attaching at a receptor site.
Yeah.
So
Totally.
we had to have evolved with them in some way for that to
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah.
If
But
that
also
makes
now,
any sense to you.
yeah, and but also like people have this issue. Oh, it's got phytic acid. It's an anti-nutrient.
Yes.
And sometimes people have bloating. So then you need to focus more on proteins and like from non-veg sources.
If they can't do well, there's a couple things I ask them to try before they give up on them. One is improved gut bacteria,
Yeah.
right? But the
Mm.
second is long soak, 10 to 12 hours soaking the dried beans or peas, and not 6, which is or more common, but 10, at least 10, and cook them till they're mushy. Because what they're not breaking down is the cellulose,
Yes.
and the heat will break it down. And yes, it'll be a little mushy, but it's going to cause less bloating and you're still going to get the protein, So it's a longer, slower cook. It's like refried beans. Have you ever had Mexican
Yes.
refried
Yeah,
beans?
absolutely.
Right, right. Those are actually easy to digest because they've been cooked twice
Yeah.
Yeah,
and they've been cooked a long time, so they're soft. So you have to cook them till they're very soft, not al dente.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel it could be one factor, perhaps the pesticides, because what I noticed was when I had beans in India, I used to get bloated. But when I
Mm,
had here,
Mm.
that was fine.
okay. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah,
Totally
Yeah.
makes a difference.
Yeah.
Round up.
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So so as women move into menopause, it's like preparation for the rest of your life. It's like, how healthy do you wanna be for the
Mm.
rest of your life, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, some people, um, I think also get some depression. Some women also get some depression, but so do men. you know, going through enterprise. Some men are going to get depression too. What they do, they go buy a sports car. But, they go spend money. They get a second wife. I don't know.
Yeah.
But women, some women, you have the empty nest, all your kids are grown. Um, and you're like, what do you do? Well, hey, everything. This is time period where you can do anything, everything you wanted to do and didn't get to do. But it is an adjustment time period there because there's a little grieving that takes place because, like me, I devote all these years to raising my children. Every single day, these people are in my life, and these people are not in my life. So there's a definite reason to have this grief. You know, for 25 years, every day I see this person, and then I
Yeah.
don't see this person.
Yeah.
Right? We talk on the phone or we text. But of course, you're going to miss that person. They're not missing you because they're out there having a good time, right?
Yeah. That's
But
true.
but you're missing them. It's like, okay. So there's a good reason. So you have to go through a little grief. And I think this is totally normal of accepting that this is, you are not the most important person in this person's life anymore. They have their own life, right? Right? They don't need you to like wipe their butt anymore, right? They're grown and they can do it themselves, right?
Yeah.
So there's a little transition, normal, that takes place. And during this transition, I really encourage women to think about, what would you like to do now? What did you used to do before you had kids? Or what did you used to do before you were in a relationship? Because not every woman has kids, right?
Yes.
But so what did you used to do when you were young, when you were 20 something, or when you were a teenager? What brought you joy?
Yes.
Did you like singing? Did you like dancing? Did you paint? Did you like reading? Did you like writing? What would you like to do? And so I encourage women to pick back up something they put aside in order to be able to move forward. Now, a lot of women are also working. They're continuing to work and they have to work, they have to contribute to the family income. And so, hey, now go for that promotion you didn't want to go for because it would be so time consuming and you had, little kids at home or you had a partner at home. Just a different approach. And so get out there, live your best life.
Yeah. It's a second spring of life.
It's a second spring of life. So people used to ask me, when are you going to come out with your book on
Mm.
Southern folk medicine? For
Yeah.
years. And I'm like, I'm writing it. And they were like, wow, it's taken a long time. And I'm like, I have kids,
Yeah.
I have
Yeah.
kids. I got to
Yes.
cook. I got to
Yes.
like go to soccer games. I
Yeah.
have to do all, this is a mom. I do all this stuff. But as soon as my kids got older, I'm like, make a sandwich. I'm writing. Right?
Yeah.
Go cook your own meal. I'm writing. So you can do this. If you have kids, you want them to be self-sufficient and not reliant on you, and they can take care of themselves. I viewed my job as getting mm, my children ready for the big world and helping them be self-reliant. So they all know how to cook. They're all great cleaners. They all know how to clean, right?
Yeah.
Um, I've had my son's partners thank me for because all my sons cook, all my sons clean, and like their partners are like, okay, this is great, right?
Lucky them.
But right, but so do my daughters, right? But that was my job, and so as soon as they got old enough to do that, I'm like, I'm spending more time now writing on herbalism, on the things that bring me satisfaction for myself, right? And so this is what I encourage people to do in menopause, women to do in menopause, and men in andropause, is pick back up what you let go in order to have this segment of your life, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's hard for some people. It's hard for some people to go, what do I do now? And they get depressed and they sit around, they watch TV, and garden. Go take a garden class. You know, this is a good time to go back to school. Yeah.
Mm.
You can go
Yeah.
back to school, take some
Yeah.
courses,
Yeah.
internet, courses on the internet, go there in person, get involved in your church if you go to church. This is your time to volunteer in the community. And that's a really good one for a lot of people. Volunteer. The hospitals, the charity shops, everybody, all these different organizations need volunteers. And if you're just sitting home watching TV, go make a difference.
Yeah.
Volunteer somewhere, right?
Mm.
I think that's where I think my services would come in, because that's what I decided to help people with, to really figure out what their passion is and how to deal with those kind of emotions that
Perfect.
come up.
Yeah.
Perfect. So now you can start thinking about menopausal women and helping this particular group, not just younger people feeling lost,
Oh
but
yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. I'm open to helping anyone who might be. In fact, I just launched my YouTube channel on Friday, just this week. Last week, I
Yay!
mean.
'Cause I think that's important. Once somebody said this to me, and I don't even remember who said it, but they were like, "You can make a living or you can follow your passion." A lot of times they're not the same,
Hmm.
Hmm.
They're
right?
not.
Right.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Many
That's
Yeah.
times.
you're right. And make a living at something you're good at, and then follow the passion from your heart,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right? And so I think
Yeah.
it's a balance between the 2.
Yeah.
Find something you're good at, then you're gonna make money and progress in your profession, but don't forget what's in your heart, what that passion is in your.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
that's everything, because unless we are not aligned with our inner self, with our core, with our true essence, with our nature, and we people can try striving for and chasing wellness, physical health, but that's going to be far out of reach because we are not in
Yes.
alignment.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So it's that balance, or as you say, that alignment. And I think when women go through menopause, this is the telling time for them. This is the moment of decision of "W what have I been good at? What is my passion? What do I want?" Follow my bliss, as Joseph Campbell said. How do you follow your bliss now? And so this is the perfect time to do that. Mm.
Yeah.
Bobby traveling,
Yeah.
it's like, "Oh, now I'm gonna go visit this country, or I'm gonna go visit here or visit there, and I'm gonna get out and see the world now." Whatever it might be, it's a good time to do that.
It's all about shifting the perspective rather than
Yeah.
seeing it as a period that one would really think of, oh, I'm finally getting there. Oh, what a pity. I'm really sad, to really think of what are the things that you could do. And finally, you're at that point in your life where you
Yeah.
have so many opportunities available for yourself and you can start working on whatever was bottled up also at the same
Yeah,
time.
exactly, exactly. And postmenopausal women also need to be cognitive of physical health, because the change of hormones is going to affect their bone strength, their muscle strength, their blood pressure, their blood sugar, and it's oftentimes you have to shift your diet because premenopausal, one third of the calories you put in your body is used as energy for reproduction for hormones, right? And so hormones shift, and you still need to eat healthy, right? You still need to eat very healthy, but not as many calories. Or
Hmm.
now you'll put on weight. If you eat exactly the same, you'll gain weight. And people go, "My metabolism changed." And yes, it did, because you're not fertile anymore. And all the calories that was going toward keeping you fertile are not needed anymore.
All
So
going
it's
to adipose tissues.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. And so now you're putting on fat. So it's like understanding that super nutritious food, but not as much of it. Yeah. So that's important. And that goes a long way at mitigating some of the, like, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, you know,
Mm.
high blood sugar,
Yeah.
just kind of reducing your intake a little bit and working out and moving and staying active. So those are the 2 things that on a physical level encourage women to think about and be concerned about.
And actually, on that note, I think this conversation wouldn't be complete if we don't talk about herbs
Okay.
and some of your herbal recommendations for women who are going through menopause and perimenopause.
For perimenopause, because of the shifting hormones, phytoestrogen in herbs are going to be very useful. So, like angelica, wild jam, and these are Western herbs, obviously, but even like quai, which is from Asia, it would be very useful. Um, Fennel, fenugreek, and add these herbs into your cooking also.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
you can cook with a lot of these and you're getting enhanced phytoestrogenic activity. And that will help balance things out if a person has like more cramps, because PMS can get a little more severe during premenopause, the those herbs are also gonna help with that and help make that not as severe, um, including black cohosh. So, red clover is another one. So, these are all the herbs that now become your best friend
Yeah.
in perimenopause,
Right.
right? On that
Yeah.
level. Going
Yeah.
through menopause, those herbs are still really, really useful, but I would add, like, maca into there. Maca's from South America. That is an herb that really helps bring endocrine balance in. Queen Anne's lace, there's a greater tendency for UTIs postmenopausal, and so, like, herbs that help keep the bladder moist so that it doesn't dry out and become, irritated. Now you've got a UTI bacteria is growing in there. So herbs that help keep the bladder healthy, like marshmallow, slippery elm, mullein, mucilaginous herbs are really good to help kind of with the bladder health and to reduce UTIs. So postmenopausal, the all the herbs that you were using before, plus the maca, are maca-like. Make sure your thyroid's doing well because this is the first time women have thyroid difficulties, is right? And so make sure you're getting things that nourish your thyroid, and you're getting enough iodine in your diet, enough sea vegetables or doing some seaweed or iodized salt, whatever it might be for you. And if you do have thyroid problems, you might going into menopause, you might find they need a little extra help. The
Yeah.
thyroid needs a little extra help,
Yeah.
especially for detoxing the body. So postmenopausal too, l- I encourage people to think about supporting the organs that detoxify the body, like the liver and the lymph. And like once or twice a year, just do a little cleanse that supports the liver and its action and lymphatic herbs like red clover is both phytoestrogenic and lymphatic. So you can kind of design your herbal formula so it's doing more than one thing at the same
Yeah.
time. And that's what I like to do. I like to look at the herbs, look at the person and go, well, the fewer herbs a person has to take, the more likely they are to stick with the protocol. So let's look at herbs that do more than one thing, like that are moistening and phytoestrogenic, like angelica,
Yeah.
right? That are moistening and lymphatic, like red clover, that are moistening and detoxifying and building, like quai, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So I kind of refined the approach a little bit more.
Mm.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. All
It's
right.
beautiful put. Yeah.
Right. So, is there anything else you'd like to add before we wrap up for today?
I can't think of anything.
Yeah.
Can
Yeah.
y'all?
I have one for
Yeah,
you.
yeah,
You always used sage as a tea in the transition period
I do.
from.
I
Yeah.
recommend that often.
Yeah. So could you just talk about that sage?
Well, sage is one of the herbs that helps us use fats better. And, it's also moistening, but but, uh, reproductive hormones, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, are made from fat. And so if our diet is too low in fat going into perimenopause and menopause, then we don't have the building blocks to make the hormones, right?
Yeah.
Right? And unfortunately, like cholesterol-lowering drugs are always going to lower reproductive hormones. So, like somebody on a statin, if it's a woman, her estrogen is going to drop. If it's a man, his testosterone is going to drop because there's not enough of the basic building blocks
Yeah.
available. So,
Yeah.
sage helps us use fat and it helps bring moisture into the skin, into the ligaments, and into the tendons. And so it's easier to move. So one of the things that can happen in menopause, it begins in perimenopause but continues into menopause, is stiffening. You know, of ligaments and tendons. And it becomes like not as easy to move the older someone gets. Older people will go, I woke up and I'm so stiff. So sage helps maintain moisture in ligaments and tendons, but it also helps reduce hot flashes at night.
Yeah.
Yep. So I
Yeah.
use it for hot flashes also.
Lovely.
Yeah. And
That's
it is
nice.
a phytoestrogen. It does have some phytoestrogenic activity, but it has other activities, phytochemicals also. So it's just a great all around herb to use. And you can take it as a tea or you can take it, put it in your food, because
Yeah.
it goes quite nice with a lot of different dishes.
Yeah. It's so amazing to see herbs being such an integral part, and I think they are indispensable. I would say that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And
Absolutely.
they keep adding value in every stage of your life.
They do.
And yeah. So I think this is an amazing way to close this episode with wisdom from someone as great as Phyllis. And thank you so much
You're
for
welcome.
being on the podcast.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. And Phyllis, where can people find you? How can they get in touch with you?
Oh, they can get in touch with me. They can find me on the internet. Website is just my name, Phyllis D Light. So they can find me there for sure. And if you just want to talk to me, I'm always available. Hit contact and send me an email and love to talk to people so they can get in touch with me that way.
Perfect.
Yeah,
We'll
I'm
all
on Instagram. And so you can find me also on Instagram.
Great.
Perfect. We'll also place all those links in the show
Yes.
notes for Phyllis's website and her Instagram account.
Thank you so much for doing that. And thanks for having me. It's been great fun.
It's
Yeah.
been an honor
Same
and our
here.
pleasure. And once again, Phyllis, thank you so much, and hope we can have you once again to discuss another.
Absolutely.
I,
Anytime. I'm totally available. Totally available.
This was really educational, insightful, and fun at the same time.
yeah.
And I'm sure it'll also be for our listeners. And to all our listeners, thank you so much for joining us. And do remember to subscribe to our e-postcard if you want to have insights of what's going to happen, what's been happening, pieces of information and knowledge that y'all can learn from, and all updates as well. So once again, thank you so much, and be healthy, be happy. Until next time, see you all
All right.
soon.
All right. Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye.